The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the parade ground, where an air of anticipation fluttered among the lines of soldiers. They stood at attention, a sea of crisp uniforms and shining boots, their eyes fixed on the raised platform at the front. The atmosphere was charged with both excitement and tension, as today's gathering promised to be unlike any they had experienced before. In the center of the stage stood Admiral Reynolds, a towering figure renowned for his strict demeanor and no-nonsense approach. His presence alone commanded respect. Soldiers whispered about his unyielding leadership style and his ability to make or break careers with just a word. Today, however, there was an electricity that crackled through the crowd, an undercurrent of discontent brewing beneath their disciplined exterior. As the Admiral prepared to deliver his speech, he scanned the ranks with a hawkish gaze. Some soldiers were anxious, while others seemed eager for his address to begin. To many, he was a symbol of authority and power. To others, particularly younger recruits struggling with their own thoughts about hierarchy and justice, he represented everything they felt was wrong with military culture. Whispers echoed amongst small groups. Some argued over promotions withheld due to politics rather than merit, while others voiced their frustrations over long hours and grueling training routines. The Admiral cleared his throat and adjusted his microphone, signaling for silence. Yet just as he began to speak about discipline and duty, something unexpected interrupted him. A soldier from the back stepped forward. Private Thompson was known for his fiery spirit, but also for challenging norms when he believed they were unjust. Today appeared to be no different as he pushed through the ranks toward the podium. "Sir," Thompson's voice echoed across the field, cutting through the tension like a knife. "We need to talk about how things are really going around here." Gasps rolled through the crowd as they witnessed this bold move. Eyes widened in disbelief. How dare Thompson confront an admiral in front of 1,000 soldiers? A ripple of murmurs erupted among them. Some felt exhilarated by his courage, while others feared what might happen next. Admiral Reynolds narrowed his eyes but kept his composure. "This is not a place for insubordination," he retorted sharply. "You will show respect." The power dynamic shifted palpably as all eyes remained glued on both men, the Admiral exuding rage and authority, while Thompson stood firm, ready to defend his beliefs. With hearts pounding in sync with the tension gripping every soldier present, it became clear that this moment might soon spiral out of control. Unseen consequences were lurking just beneath the surface as they braced themselves for what was about to unfold in this charged atmosphere full of anticipation and anxiety. Admiral Reynolds was a name that echoed through the ranks of the Sukdal military, known both for his undeniable authority and his strict, sometimes feared, leadership style. With over 20 years of service, he had climbed the ranks through sheer determination and an unwavering commitment to discipline. His reputation as a no-nonsense officer preceded him. He was someone who believed that rules existed for a reason, and that every soldier must adhere to them without question. Physically imposing, Reynolds had a presence that made soldiers stand a little straighter when he entered a room. His sharp blue uniform was always impeccably pressed, and his medals shone brightly against the fabric, a testament to his many achievements and honors. He often had a steely gaze that could pierce through anyone's bravado, leaving subordinates feeling both intimidated and inspired. This aura of authority made him an effective leader, but it also created a divide between him and the younger troops, who sometimes struggled to understand his unyielding approach. Throughout his career, Reynolds had a reputation for being tough but fair. Many who had served under him respected his commitment to excellence and admired his strategic mind during crises. Yet there were also whispers about those who had fallen out of favor due to trivial mistakes or disagreements. A few soldiers suspected that his emphasis on obedience sometimes overshadowed the importance of understanding and compassion. Tales circulated among the ranks about those who had been reprimanded harshly for minor infractions, stories that left some recruits apprehensive about making any missteps in his presence. Reynolds was particularly known for his high standards during training exercises. He would often stay late, personally overseeing drills and pushing his soldiers to their limits. "Mediocrity is unacceptable," he would shout, instilling in them a relentless drive for perfection. While this earned him respect from seasoned soldiers who thrived under pressure, newer recruits sometimes felt overwhelmed by the intensity of his expectations. Despite the fear he instilled in some, Reynolds had moments where he demonstrated his belief in camaraderie. He would occasionally share stories from his own early days in the service, hoping to inspire others to learn from his struggles. However, those anecdotes often felt overshadowed by his stern demeanor. As Admiral Reynolds prepared to address the soldiers that day, he was unaware that the simmering tension among them might soon boil over into a confrontation that would challenge not just his authority, but also his very perception of leadership itself. Little did he know that Private Thompson's bold interruption would set off a chain of events that would change everything he believed about command and respect in front of 1,000 witnesses. The moment was electric, with the air thickening around the gathered soldiers as Private Thompson stepped forward, his heart racing. The crowd fell silent, eyes darting between the Admiral and the brave soldier who had dared to challenge authority. This was not a simple act of disrespect. It was a culmination of frustration that had been simmering among the ranks for far too long. "Sir," Thompson called out, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gripped him. "We need to talk about how things are really going around here." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Gasps rippled through the assembled troops. They were caught between shock and exhilaration, aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Admiral Reynolds, taken aback by this unexpected outburst, narrowed his eyes and clenched his jaw. "This is not a place for insubordination," he barked, his voice booming across the parade ground. The authority that usually filled his words now felt strained, as if the very foundation of his command was being tested. He stepped down from the podium, moving closer to Thompson, exuding an aura of anger and disbelief. "You will show respect." Thompson stood firm, refusing to back down. The tension between them escalated like a storm brewing on the horizon. "Respect is earned, sir. We're tired of being treated like we don't matter." The soldier's boldness sent another ripple through the crowd, some soldiers nodding in agreement, while others looked on in fear of what might happen next. As Admiral Reynolds processed Thompson's words, a flurry of emotions coursed through him. Anger, disbelief, and beneath it all, a flicker of doubt. How had it come to this? Here was a soldier who dared to voice the frustrations many felt but feared to express. The Admiral's face flushed with rage as he took another step closer, fists clenched at his sides. "I've devoted my life to this service," he shouted back, his voice trembling with intensity. "And I will not tolerate disrespect from anyone." In that charged moment, the crowd held its breath, caught in a standoff that seemed to stretch into eternity. Eyes widened as Thompson took a deep breath and spoke again, his tone softer but no less defiant. "We need better leadership, sir. Leadership that listens." Before anyone could react, Reynolds moved instinctively, fueled by a mix of anger and adrenaline. With a swift motion, He threw a punch aimed at Thompson's face. But instead of cowering or dodging away, Thompson reacted with surprising agility. He ducked just in time and countered with a powerful strike of his own. The impact echoed across the parade ground as the Admiral stumbled backward, disbelief etched on his face. For a moment, time stood still as 1,000 soldiers watched their leader fall, the very image of authority knocked down in front of them. In that split second, everything had changed. The power dynamics shifted irreversibly as they braced themselves for what would come next. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Private Thompson stood his ground, eyes locked on Admiral Reynolds. The soldiers around them held their breath, sensing that the encounter was about to reach a boiling point. The Admiral's face flushed with anger. It was clear that he felt his authority being challenged in a way he had never experienced before. In an instant, the Admiral's resolve crumbled under the pressure of the moment. Driven by a mix of fury and indignation, he lunged forward. With a swift motion, he threw a punch aimed directly at Thompson's face, fueled by years of military training and an instinct to assert dominance. The crowd gasped collectively, stunned at the sight of their leader resorting to violence so quickly. Time seemed to slow as the punch flew through the air. It was a blur of motion. Reynolds' fist moving with purpose and aggression, and Thompson standing firm, unyielding in his stance. The young soldier had anticipated this reaction. He had seen the Admiral's temper flare before during tense moments, but had never imagined it would escalate to this level. With an impressive display of agility, Thompson ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as Reynolds' hand swooshed past him. He used this momentum to pivot quickly on his heel. Instinctively, he retaliated with a powerful counterpunch aimed at the Admiral's jaw, a move born from both adrenaline and determination. The impact reverberated across the parade ground like thunderclaps echoing off distant mountains. Admiral Reynolds staggered backward, shock etched across his face as he struggled to regain his balance. The crowd erupted into a mixture of gasps and murmurs. Some soldiers were wide-eyed in disbelief, while others cheered at Thompson's unexpected bravery. As Reynolds stumbled, time seemed to freeze for just a moment. Soldiers exchanged glances filled with astonishment. They were witnessing a pivotal moment in their military careers. An aura of disbelief hung over them as their long-standing image of authority was shattered right before their eyes. What had just happened? The Admiral, once regarded as an unassailable figure, was now reeling from a single blow delivered by one of his own subordinates. This act not only challenged Reynolds' authority, but also ignited something deeper within the ranks, a spark of rebellion against an overly strict regime. In that instant, it became clear. Everything had changed. The power dynamics that had governed their interactions for so long were now thrown into chaos. As Reynolds fought to regain his footing and composure, the soldiers could feel that this confrontation would have lasting consequences for both their leader and themselves moving forward. The seeds of change had been planted amidst the turmoil on that fateful day, leaving everyone wondering what might come next in this unfolding drama. As Admiral Reynolds stumbled backward from the surprise of his own punch missing its mark, Private Thompson seized the moment. The adrenaline coursing through him sharpened his senses, and in that split second, he realized he had an opportunity to reclaim his dignity and challenge the status quo in a way no one else dared to. With a swift turn on his heel, Thompson pivoted to face the Admiral again. He could feel the energy of the crowd behind him, their breaths held tight, eyes wide with disbelief at the unfolding confrontation. Drawing upon every ounce of courage, he readied himself. The training he had undergone kicked in. He focused on technique rather than emotion, channeling his frustration into something constructive. When Reynolds regained his footing and lunged forward once more, his expression was one of unyielding fury. This time, however, it was Thompson who anticipated the move. In a rapid but calculated motion, he leaned back slightly, allowing the Admiral's momentum to propel him forward. It was a classic misdirection. Reynolds had expected Thompson to flinch away or cower under pressure. Instead of retreating, Thompson stepped into the space as Reynolds approached. Timing was everything. He pivoted on his back foot just as the Admiral drew near and unleashed a powerful counterpunch aimed squarely for Reynolds' jaw. The force behind it was fueled by not only anger, but also a desire for respect and recognition. The punch connected with incredible precision, creating a sound that cut through the tense silence, a sharp crack that echoed across the parade ground. Soldiers jumped at the noise, their gasps rising in unison as they witnessed their commanding officer being dealt such a staggering blow by one of their own. It was a moment that would be etched in their memories forever. Reynolds's head snapped back from the impact. He staggered as if struck by lightning. Surprise mingled with disbelief across his features. For an instant, it seemed even he could not comprehend what had just transpired. A private standing up against an admiral and landing a blow that showcased both spirit and skill. As he teetered back unsteadily on his feet, time appeared to stand still for everyone watching. There were no longer clear lines between authority and rebellion. They were simply witnesses to an extraordinary event that defied every expectation. Cheers erupted from some soldiers, while others stood frozen in shock. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably in an instant. In that critical moment, while Admiral Reynolds struggled to maintain his balance and regain composure, Thompson became more than just a soldier. He became a symbol of defiance against oppressive authority, a catalyst for change within the ranks that would continue resonating long after that fateful encounter on the parade ground. The silence that followed the punch was deafening, a collective gasp echoing through the parade ground as Admiral Reynolds hit the ground, stunned and bewildered. The sight of their commanding officer sprawled on the grass, momentarily stripped of his authority, sent shockwaves through the ranks. Soldiers stood frozen in disbelief, grappling with what they had just witnessed. As reality began to set in, murmurs spread like wildfire. Some soldiers exchanged incredulous glances, struggling to process the gravity of the situation. How could a revered admiral have been brought down by one of his own? Others felt a surge of exhilaration. Thompson's defiance sparked a newfound hope among those who had long felt oppressed by Reynolds's stern leadership. It was as if a long-held dam had burst, and the collective frustration and pent-up emotions began to surface. "Did you see that?" one soldier whispered to his friend, barely able to contain his excitement. "He actually hit him. I can't believe it." The atmosphere shifted from shock to disbelief, and then to a sense of liberation as more soldiers began to murmur their approval for Thompson's bold stand. In stark contrast, a few veterans who had grown accustomed to Reynolds's rigid command expressed unease. They worried that this moment could lead to chaos within their ranks. The very fabric of military discipline seemed threatened. "This isn't how it should be," one sergeant exclaimed, looking around nervously at the growing crowd. "We need order." Meanwhile, others rallied around Thompson, applauding his bravery and standing up against what they perceived as years of unreasonable authority. Cheering erupted sporadically among some groups, filling the once silent parade ground with the sound of rebellion against tradition. However, they were cautious. Even among applause lay an uncertain awareness that there might be consequences for challenging such high-ranking authority. Amidst this whirlwind of emotions, Admiral Reynolds was struggling to rise from the ground. His pride wounded along with his jaw. He fought to regain his composure while grappling with confusion over how everything had spiraled so quickly out of his control. As he finally stood up, a mix of embarrassment and anger washing over him, he caught sight of veteran soldiers wavering between loyalty and disbelief. The realization struck him hard. Respect had been irrevocably shaken within these ranks. As uncertainty loomed over every soldier's head like a dark cloud, Reynolds understood that disciplinary actions would not suffice after such a public humiliation. If he did not act decisively and wisely in this aftermath, he risked losing more than just authority. He risked losing morale completely. While some soldiers celebrated Thompson's act as a turning point for reform within their regiment, others held their breath anxiety for what would come next in this uncertain landscape, shaped by unexpected confrontation and shifting alliances. A pivotal moment etched into their shared history as they moved forward into uncharted territory within their military careers. As the dust settled from the shocking confrontation, the atmosphere on the parade ground became charged with a whirlpool of mixed emotions. Soldiers stood in tight clusters, whispering and sharing their thoughts about what they had just witnessed. Shock was the initial reaction. Many were still grappling with the reality that their revered admiral had been knocked down by one of their own. "I can't believe he actually did that," one private exclaimed, incredulity etched across his face. The words hung in the air as several others nodded in agreement, their expressions a mix of disbelief and excitement. It was a moment none of them had ever anticipated. Watching Admiral Reynolds, a man who embodied strict discipline, topple like that was akin to seeing a giant fall. Then came laughter, bubbling up unexpectedly as some soldiers found humor in the situation. "Did you see his face?" Someone chuckled, shaking their head. "He looked like he'd just seen a ghost." The laughter was contagious, spreading through certain sections of the crowd despite the gravity of what had occurred. It provided a much-needed release, breaking the tension that had enveloped them for so long and allowing those who felt stifled under Reynolds' command to share a moment of camaraderie. But amid the amusement, there were also murmurs of admiration for Private Thompson. Whispers grew into quiet cheers as soldiers began to appreciate his boldness in standing up against authority. "He showed guts," one sergeant remarked, acknowledging Thompson's courage. "We've all wanted to say something, but never had the nerve." This admiration echoed through ranks that had long wrestled with feelings of frustration and restraint. For some veterans, however, these reactions sparked unease. They exchanged worried glances, unsure how this would alter life within their regiment. "What happens now?" one questioned softly, anxiety creeping into his tone. They recalled the strict expectations set by Reynolds and wondered if this display would undermine military discipline entirely. Amid this whirlwind of reactions, Thompson stood off to the side, processing everything that had transpired. He could feel eyes upon him, some filled with pride and others laden with uncertainty. It was both exhilarating and daunting. He felt like a spark that ignited an open flame, yet recognized how quickly such flames could burn out of control. As the cheers and laughter faded into whispers and conversations among soldiers pondering what lay ahead, it became clear. This confrontation had shifted something fundamental within their ranks. No longer would they simply adhere to orders out of fear or respect. Questions about leadership and authority now hung heavy in the air like smoke after an explosion. The once clear lines dividing authority from dissent blurred significantly that day. Every soldier felt it. the weight of change settling over them as they navigated uncertain waters together, shaped by camaraderie and conflict alike. What would come next remained to be seen. But for now, Private Thompson's actions served as a catalyst for dialogue among those who had long remained silent in fear, a moment that would echo through their military history forevermore. In the days following the unexpected confrontation, the atmosphere within the military base grew charged with anticipation and uncertainty. News of the incident spread like wildfire, reaching higher military authorities who demanded immediate investigations into the conduct of both Admiral Reynolds and Private Thompson. The incident had not only shocked the ranks, but also raised serious questions about discipline and authority within the armed forces. A formal inquiry was quickly initiated by the commanding officer of the base, who appointed a panel to investigate the events leading up to and following the altercation. This was a crucial step. Higher-ups were eager to understand the factors that led to such a public display of defiance against a senior officer. Witnesses were called in one by one, and testimonies varied widely. Some soldiers expressed admiration for Thompson, citing a need for change in leadership styles, while others were hesitant to speak openly, fearing repercussions. As the investigation proceeded, tension mounted among the troops. Many soldiers found themselves caught between their loyalty to the Admiral, who had been a strong figure for years, and their newfound respect for Thompson's courageous stand. The panel sought out video footage captured by several smartphones during the incident, analyzing every detail of the confrontation in hopes of understanding its ramifications. Meanwhile, Admiral Reynolds faced his own scrutiny. The panel examined his handling of authority and whether his strict demeanor had contributed to an environment where frustration festered among the ranks. As he sat before the panel, he attempted to defend his actions leading up to the punch. "I was merely enforcing discipline," he insisted, but his words fell flat against the reality of what had transpired. The Admiral's reputation hung in the balance, as many began to question if he was fit to lead after such a public embarrassment. Private Thompson, on the other hand, was thrust into the spotlight as well. While he had initially felt exhilarated by his actions, he now faced potential disciplinary measures for his role in the altercation. He appeared before the panel with a mix of anxiety and determination, ready to explain his perspective. "I acted out of frustration that many of us felt," he articulated, trying to convey that his actions were not just personal, but representative of a broader sentiment among soldiers. As discussions unfolded among military leaders about how best to address this incident, opinions started to diverge. Some advocated for a reprimand for both men to restore order and reinforce discipline, while others suggested using this moment as an opportunity for reform within their ranks. The conflicting views reflected a larger debate about authority versus accountability, a conversation that had long been buried beneath layers of tradition. The final decision rested heavily on higher-ups as they contemplated what message they wanted to send to their troops. Would they uphold the old ways or embrace a shift toward more open dialogue and understanding? The outcome of this investigation would resonate far beyond the parade ground, shaping the future culture of their military unit for years to come. As everyone awaited the panel's recommendations, it became clear that this pivotal moment would leave an indelible mark on their shared history, one that would redefine their approach to leadership and camaraderie moving forward. The confrontation between Admiral Reynolds and Private Thompson served as a powerful lesson in leadership, authority, and the delicate balance of respect. As the dust settled and the aftershocks of the event rippled through the military ranks, many began to reflect on what had unfolded, not just as a single incident, but as a moment that encapsulated broader truths about leadership. Authority, it became evident, must be wielded wisely. For years, Admiral Reynolds had commanded respect through strict discipline. However, his inability to recognize the simmering frustrations within his ranks led to a catastrophic breach of trust and authority. Leaders must understand that demands for respect should be met with mutual understanding and empathy. Commands that rely solely on power risk alienating those they aim to lead. In failing to engage with his troops' concerns, Reynolds inadvertently set the stage for his own downfall. Private Thompson's act of defiance provided a counter-narrative. Respect can also stem from bravery and courage in standing up for one's values. While his actions were unprecedented, they revealed a yearning for an environment where soldiers felt their voices mattered. This incident sparked discussions across the ranks about how leaders should approach conflict resolution, emphasizing the need for open dialogue rather than reactionary measures. High-ranking officials began recognizing that fostering an atmosphere where concerns could be addressed without fear could lead to a more cohesive unit. Moreover, this situation provided insight into handling conflict with grace and composure. Leaders who react emotionally can find themselves in scenarios where authority is contested, an important realization illustrated by Reynolds's impulsive punch in response to Thompson's challenge. Effective conflict resolution involves not only maintaining control over oneself, but also addressing others with a level of respect that encourages collaboration rather than hostility. The soldiers witnessed firsthand the consequences of unchecked authority colliding with raw emotion, a scenario many had faced in various forms during their training or deployments. This event instigated a profound shift in how they perceived hierarchy. As they processed the aftermath, many began questioning whether rigid adherence to traditional power structures was beneficial. As discussions unfolded in mess, halls, and barracks, the prevailing sentiment reflected a desire for reform, an eagerness to redefine military culture to promote inclusivity and mutual respect. Soldiers yearned for environments where leaders could admit errors and seek improvement rather than enforce blame through harsh discipline. This impetus for change was not merely about demystifying authority figures. It was a call to action for leaders at all levels to embody accountability, humility, and empathy. The events on that fateful day highlighted potential pathways toward better leadership practices rooted in respect and understanding. Ultimately, both Admiral Reynolds and Private Thompson symbolized contrasting approaches to leadership. As military personnel processed these revelations moving forward, the goal became clear. Harnessing this moment as an opportunity for growth would not only reshape their culture, but also evolve their understanding of leadership altogether, ensuring that future leaders would prioritize nurturing relationships over merely demanding obedience. In conclusion, the confrontation between Admiral Reynolds and Private Thompson became a transformative event for the entire military unit, profoundly impacting morale and reshaping perceptions of leadership. The fallout from that shocking moment not only stirred emotions among the soldiers, but also led to a critical examination of traditional authority structures within their ranks. For many soldiers, witnessing someone stand up against a long-standing figure of authority like Reynolds was both revolutionary and liberating. It sparked a sense of empowerment among them, breathing new life into discussions around respect, communication, and the importance of voicing concerns. The previously ingrained culture of silence in the face of strict discipline began to dissolve as troops recognized that their feelings and experiences could shape the future of their environment. Soldiers expressed eagerness for change, longing for leaders who would listen and foster open dialogue rather than maintaining an atmosphere solely defined by fear. Moreover, the incident served as an important lesson for leaders at all levels. Admiral Reynolds faced undeniable consequences stemming from his inability to recognize the frustrations brewing beneath the surface amongst his troops. His downfall underscored that authority figures must engage with their subordinates empathetically. Rigid command styles could alienate those they wished to lead. Moving forward, true leadership should incorporate humility. Acknowledging mistakes and showing a willingness to adapt can cultivate respect and loyalty more effectively than fear alone. The investigation that followed amplified these lessons further. As military authorities gathered testimonies and insights from both parties involved, it became clear that understanding and addressing grievances could lead to stronger bonds within units. The incident highlighted how open lines of communication among soldiers could lead to better teamwork and cooperation, ultimately strengthening their collective resolve. As discussions continued throughout barracks and mess halls post-incident, it became evident that this pivotal moment would reshape expectations for future leadership practices. Soldiers began assessing what qualities they truly valued in their leaders. Qualities such as integrity, approachability, and accountability took precedence over authoritarian control. Ultimately, this confrontation taught valuable lessons not just about conflict resolution, but also about nurturing relationships grounded in trust. It challenged both soldiers and leaders to reconsider what genuine respect looks like in a military context. It's not merely compliance to commands, but rather an active engagement built on mutual understanding. As this chapter closed on a remarkable day in their history, members of the military unit stood on the brink of change, poised to redefine authority where respect was earned through integrity rather than demanded through power. This shift promised an evolution toward a more collaborative military culture, where everyone had a voice, a legacy born from one unforgettable encounter that would resonate for years to come.